Good evening, everybody. Buenas tardes a todos y gracias por la invitación. No hablo tan bien como Aida y pues sí voy a hablar en inglés, pero it's good to be with you. My name's Father Brendan Busse. I'm a Jesuit priest, associate pastor here at Dolores Mission in Boyle Heights, Los Angeles. I grew up here in Los Angeles on the eastern edge of Los Angeles County. I was born down in Orange County where my grandparents moved back in the 60s. Like a lot of folks from the Midwest, they moved out here, took advantage of a lot of public schools, property taxes allowed them to buy their first homes, things like that. But then grew up in public schools here in Los Angeles. And I actually didn't meet the Jesuits. I wasn't, we were baptized to keep my grandma happy, you know, but met the Jesuits as a volunteer in Central Juvenile Hall back in the 90s when Juvenile Hall was overflowing, because that was the only solution we thought we had to social problems, was just throw away the people who were suffering. So growing up in LA, that was kind of a waking up moment for me, that something about my suburban reality, they were investing plenty of money in public schools, but then here in East LA, most of the kids my age were in jail. The public schools weren't doing them any service, and many of them ended up locked up. So that has a big part of my own vocation, growing up in this fascinating city of Los Angeles, now privileged to work here at Dolores Mission in Boyle Heights.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Father. I wanted to ask you, when you hear the cries of our congregants or your congregants, what are you telling yourself? And also, what are you telling them about how to process this period in time?
Yeah, you know, it's a good question, because I would say, I mean, our congregation cries a lot, cries at funerals. We cry for the suffering of our people. But we don't really complain all that much, because this is a place that knows what it means to be on the outskirts. It knows what it means to be marginalized. So in this moment, their concerns, I think the new thing, like the community's been disinvested for years and years. The community has struggled for so many things. So I don't hear those concerns, although they're always there. Why don't we reform immigration system? Why don't we invest more in education? Why don't we give people of this neighborhood another option other than jail, you know? Why don't we take care of our mental health? I mean, those have been cries forever and ever. The new one that I think with the pandemic happening right now is the concern that maybe we feel disconnected, you know? And that's the biggest worry, I think, of our community, Latino community, you know, that to not be able to be with each other is one of the hardest things about this moment. And so a lot of people talk about, you know, this is an uncertain time. This is something new is happening here that we don't know about. And I think early on, I began to realize that I stopped calling it uncertain, because I think what's happening now is certain things are becoming very clear. And there are things that maybe people weren't paying attention to before. If you had privilege not to be affected by the system that wasn't working for the last 50 years, you know, good for you. But what's happening now is not something uncertain. It's the logical conclusion of a system that it's set up 50 years ago to do this, to do what it's doing now. And so whenever I speak to people, I try to say, well, what are we learning now? What are we seeing now? And who needs to be seen? Whose voice needs to be heard? What things need to be done? And I think if we just shift that perspective, it's not really an uncertain time. It's unstable, that's for sure. But it's not uncertain. We are clear in our faith about what's important and what needs to be done. This community has always been clear about what it means to treat somebody with dignity. What has been unstable is the way in which the system doesn't allow us to do that. And so I say to everybody, I don't think this is an uncertain time. I think it is a time where things are becoming very clear, and there's a kind of call to action that we do something so that this not become a time where we just have to live through it. Let's just get through it. I think this is the time, and this is for me personally as much as anything else, this is the year I want to live the rest of my life from. I want to live my rest of my life with the kind of moral clarity that we have right now, that we know who essential workers really are, that we know that Black lives matter, and until they do, no lives really matter, right? I think that this is a time I want to live the rest of my life from this moment. I don't just want to get through it. Because one thing the people of Boyle Heights and Dolores Mission have taught me, as soon as we say that's a God-forsaken place, that's a God-forsaken person, or that's a God-forsaken moment, then we've given up. And God never gives up on us. And so I think that's the thing that I respond to. All the concerns, they're not new, but it's a new invitation to say, how can we see God at work in this moment? And how can we get on that bus? You know, how can we participate in that movement? Because I think that's just really important. We don't give up on people. God doesn't give up on us. And so this is a system and this is a moment where we need to work it. And we need to get out and vote, and we need to do the things that we can do in order to live from this place, not just to get through it.